So welcome everybody to the DASA ELF gathering. And tonight's topic is going to be on how to get the board to buy into your DevOps transformation plans. And we are joined this evening by, oh, Coco, can you move to the next slide? Yeah, sorry, the agenda, sorry. I'm going to just explain. So my name's Katrina Logie. I'm your moderator, and I also organise content for events for the DASA community. So I will introduce the speakers and the session. And then we're going to actually hear from Bruno, who is the community manager for DASA. He's going to be talking about the ELF and the community. And how important the DASA community is. And then we'll hear from Helen Parker, who is head of membership manager for the newly launched DASA membership. So we're going to learn about the DASA membership. And I just want to sort of say, as I said before, that if you have any questions, this is a roundtable discussion. It's not like a panel. It's very much like, if you have a question, we want to hear from you. We want to make it interactive. So just raise your hand using the reactions, as Bruno mentioned earlier, and just raise your hand and we will unmute you to ask a question. So do feel free to ask questions as we go along. And we will be recording this session, so that will be sent to you later on, early on next week. Next slide, Coco. So thank you very much for our speakers tonight, who are highly regarded thought leaders in the IT industry. And first off, we're joined by Alexander Whitfein, who is the VP of Technology and Excellence and Engineering at Elsevier. Hi, Alexander. Is he here? Where is he? Bruno? He's not here. Okay. Maybe he's joining late, but I mean, he knows about the event. Anyway, sorry about that. I thought he was here. Okay. Well, then we're joined by Arnaud van Richterschoten, who is head of IT at Cyberbank. Hello, Arnaud.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you here and to hear from your experience. And Arnaud, your background is service and technology, sort of IT transformation with international experience in digital workplace services and infrastructure management. Can you just sort of, just explain a little bit about your role at Cyberbank?
Yeah, Cyberbank, I'm with Cyber since April of this year. Yeah. Before that, I spent 7 years with Emirates in Dubai, and before that, I was 9 years with CETA in Geneva. So I made a jump from aviation into fintech. Quite an interesting jump. I thought aviation was not the place to be in a post-COVID period. Yeah, very happy to have found a job at Cyber. Cyberbank is a newly created bank. I'm talking to you from Zug in Switzerland. Zug is what they call the crypto valley. So there is a big agglomeration of crypto-oriented companies over there. Seba is a fully licensed bank, but the whole idea is that we are offering, I would say, blockchain-based services. Of course, the traditional crypto coins, but that all with a, I would say, fully backing from Swiss authorities, banking authorities. That certainly in this, I would say, crypto world where we see a lot of, I would say, cowboys coming and going, adds a level of authority and a level of trust to our customers that we're benefiting big time. So yeah, we're a small outfit, 80 people, startup phase, but good fun, and certainly after the 100,000 people in Emirates, quite a welcome change for myself.
Great. Well, it's great to have you here and looking forward to hearing about your experience later on. And Alexander, we have actually got here. Alexander, do you want to unmute yourself?
I can. Apologies for being late. I was apparently on the wrong link. I was on a
I'm sorry about that.
On a Google Meet link. So
yeah. Well, Zander, I'm going to call you Zander.
Yes, that's fine.
So, Zander, you are the VP of Technology Excellence and Engineering at Elsevier, and you are an entrepreneurial senior leader with, in computer science. And you are mainly focused on engineering, technology, and product development for nearly 15 years. Oh, is that me? Can you just explain about your current role, just in sort of 2 minutes, if that's possible?
Oh, maybe even shorter. Yeah. So yes, employed within Elsevier currently for the past 3.5, almost 4 years. Originally hired to build the Amsterdam Tech Hub, which we have done right now. So we scaled from 20 people to around 180 people now within 1.5 years' time, and pivoted my role last year to also take on technology excellence within the group next to having a VP engineering role. So I basically have a dual track role, and I manage a couple of products in the vertical, technical custodian of products like Scopus, which is a flagship product within Elsevier. I do the quality engineering, which basically is horizontal through the portfolio. I do the privacy bit for Elsevier, and I am the technical custodian of Engineering Village, which is another product that sits in the Elsevier research portfolio. I have a group of about 180 people as a whole, and then next to that, I'm spearheading the creation of technology excellence within research, and that is more getting, well, technology excellence, of course, but also a more general way of delivery, ways of working, aligning certain ceremonies, practices, onboarding, like to get more of a general cadence of, well, more of a technology ways of working into the company. So my role has different angles and different accountabilities. It depends on which area you want to go into.
Okay. Okay, great. Very, very diverse.
Yes.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and we'll hear more from you in a minute. And
Thanks
then
for the invitation.
Okay. And Arvind, nice to have you here. So Arvind, you are the Senior Vice President and Digital Engineering at Vert USA. Can you sort of, give us a little bit about your background and sort of, currently your role?
Sure. Hello, everybody. This is Arvind Rathore. I'm based out of Bangalore, India. And as Katrina mentioned, I'm the Senior Vice President, Digital Engineering at Virtusa. As part of my role, I help clients. I as an IT services company. So I help clients across the banking, retail, insurance, telecom, as well as healthcare space in their digital engineering journeys, right? So as part of that, advising them, help around the agile and DevOps transformation as well. So been with this organization for around about 3 years. Prior to that, I've led digital transformation journeys for companies like Societe Generale and Shell. So happy to be here and looking forward to this discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. And you are also a DASA influencer.
I'm also a DASA influencer, yes.
Great. And Sebastian, also, thank you for being part of this. Sebastian is a co-author for the DASA DevOps Leadership Program, and he is the transformational global leader for Splunk. So just a couple of words from you, Sebastian, about your current role.
Thanks, and yeah, welcome to this round table. I hope everyone feels comfortable and we can create a safe place for asking questions. Around myself, I think it's important to know that I normally have 2 children running around. I have the luxury this weekend to be a single dad who's not being, hopefully not being disturbed by a barking dog or children during this webinar. But yeah, that's luxury. But just to share, in my daily activities for my work, I reach out to clients where I'm being positioned as their strategic advisor. That means like, okay, please tell me your issues, your problems, your challenges, how to develop a joint strategy for yourself, and how to make that a data problem. or an automation or technology problem. The difficulty is in this era is that we have so much technology and opportunities and way of working available, that it's the adoption that's critical into your organizations to be able to yield benefits of all those, let's call it, opportunity out of the market. My role is to bring some clarity on what's available and how it can help your company succeed in this new era of constant change. Where I think the important statement is, and I like the statement of Jack Welch, that is also something that I would like to kick off with. If the rate of change outside organizations exceeds your capability of change inside your organizations, you will be out of business anytime soon. And this webinar for me is around how to make sure that is known to the board itself. I'm looking forward to work with you today.
Wonderful, thank you, Sebastian. And just, Coco, moving on to the next slide, if we can just explain about DASA. So move on to the DASA, DevOps Agile Skills Association, if you can move on to the next slide as well. So the goals and objectives for DASA is to develop transformation guidance for organizations who are looking to adopt DevOps ways of operating, and provide a platform for leaders and practitioners to share DevOps experiences, focusing on enabling talent transformation and people readiness, and also to celebrate and highlight the DevOps successes. Okay, so the next slide, Coco. First up, we're just going to give a 4-minute explanation, and then we'll go into the roundtable on how to convince the board to buy in to DevOps transformation. Sorry, digital transformation. Bruno, do you want to, who is our community manager, explain a little bit about DASA community?
Sure, thanks and welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. Yeah, as Katrina just mentioned, I'm the community engagement manager for DASA. I would like to share with you why this is important for us, because actually our community, as the slide says, is at the heart of everything what we do. Our community is key to address our mission. All of our community volunteers actually are engaged with our mandate by either building transformation and value guidance, offering talent readiness guidance, and also always collaborating in a global sharing platform. So our community builds and strengthens the awareness of DevOps within their networks. Everybody that participates in our community is convinced that our approach is the best one, and of course, because of that, promotes it both online and in local markets. Of course, nowadays, mostly online because of our pandemic, but at the end of the day, of course, is always the idea to go back to the local markets and do this later on. We have several activities that happens within our community, from programs such as the DASA Ambassador, DASA Influencer, as we mentioned. Can I ask, please, everybody to
could they mute their microphones if they're not talking? Sorry. A bit of background noise.
Thanks for that. Just to wrap up this part, so we have several programs such as the Ambassador, the Influencer, in which Arvin, for example, is one of our DASA influencers. We also have our working groups. So Sebastian, on top of being the co-author of one of our programs, is also a leader of one of our working groups. But we also have other activities like this one, a forum for leaders, and this is the Enterprise Leadership Forum. So I would like to explain you a bit more about what is the ELF. Please, the next slide. So our Enterprise Leadership Forum is a high-end platform that is exclusively comprised by enterprises, technology, senior leaders from all around the globe. As you could see, we have here people from India, from Netherlands, from all over Europe, from people from Latin America. So that's the idea, to have people from all over the world. So the participants of this forum wants to become successful in building, developing, and delivering new products and services in their objective, let's say, to meet business needs and requirements, while at the same time being more effective and improving customer satisfaction. So that's the main idea of why we have here senior leaders in the technology part of the business. The forum's objective is to share knowledge and collaboration at a senior level, facilitating organizational leaders to support and learn from each other's successes, and why not also challenges and mistakes, and promoting the generation of shared value among DevOps thought leaders. So as is it happening right now, we as DASA headquarters organize global DASA ELF events where highly relevant DevOps topics are discussed. So hopefully you're gonna also enjoy the topic that we have today for all of you. Next slide, please. So that was just in a nutshell what it is, our community and the ELF. Of course, for further information, you can always contact me in the email that you can see in the slide. But I also invite you to check, if you haven't been there yet, to visit our website. You can see a lot of information in there, not only about our community, but also our programs and all of what we do. So take a look at the website. We're always improving and updating with a lot of information. And with that having said, yeah, I'm going back to you, Katrina. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bruno. And that was, any questions, obviously do ask Bruno regarding the community, or if you're interested in joining the community as an ambassador or an influencer, then get in touch with Bruno at bruno.whites@devopsagileskills.org. And moving on to the next slide. Helen, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about the newly created membership for DASA.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you, Bruno, for the introduction on the communities, etc. I now just want to take a few minutes to introduce you to the new DASA membership program. Bruno mentioned a moment ago about a number of platforms that currently exist in the DASA realm. And we're now moving towards a new membership program where we look to become a key partner to organizations in their DevOps journey. So I'd like to discuss briefly how we intend to achieve that. And we will do this by focusing on 4 key areas. So number 1 is transformation guidance, where we aim to help companies wherever they may be in their own DevOps journey. It's all about community and providing platforms for members to share experiences and best practice, like today, for example. And excuse me, my husband's just walked in the door from the vet, so I apologise for the noise. It's about enabling talent and helping members to nurture their staff. And finally, recognition and celebrating those success stories which encourages and supports change. So next slide. So why are we doing this? So whilst thousands of people have taken advantage of the existing DASA platforms and communities, we understand there are many different types of challenges that organisations face, such as attracting staff, changing culture, mapping a clear pathway towards transformation goals, just to name a few. Next slide. So in order to help organisations to further overcome challenges and create tailored solutions for their teams, DASA has created a new membership program that offers 3 distinct options and that expands on our existing platforms to create more extensive talent academies, a bigger resource library, a more diverse community, and other benefits. So next slide. I'm keeping this really brief, but for example, the enterprise membership shown here is the most relevant for today's audience and is designed to help you in a number of ways, such as accessing to practical guidance, experience-based learning, skills development for teams, and events such as this. Next slide. So there are numerous features and benefits linked to the membership program, and I don't want to overwhelm you, so I just want to touch on a few today. So the membership can help you increase employer branding. We understand that attracting and maintaining staff is complex. Through utilising various member forums, award opportunities, event participation. We enable you to influence your reputation as an employer among job seekers and your own employees, and to stand out from your competition. It can also assist to enhance employee engagement. This can be done through implementing a continuous development environment for employees. We can help this through talented learning resources, certificates and digital badges for completion, and through various networking opportunities such as work groups and communities. Again, like this. And thirdly, this membership can provide you with elements to build and enhance a talent academy for your DevOps team. So our goal is to help members create a continuous learning culture that allows you to map your exact needs via the DASA Talent Academy, DASA Skills and Competence Framework, through extensive certification and training programs, and of course, community platforms to share best practices and experience with others. So next slide. So I realize it is a lot of information, and these are just a few of the elements of the program. And basically the membership program is designed to help your organization on multiple levels and complement what's already in place. So if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Helen. Any questions about membership? Do we have? Otherwise, we can, answer those at the end. I think if not, we'll move on to the roundtable discussion. So thank you everybody for being here. And as I said, it's a roundtable, so please do ask questions if you have any as we go along. It's very much audience participation. And okay, so we're going to be talking about, how to convince the board to buy in to digital transformation. And the key areas that we're focusing on is investment, budget, time to market, incentives, talent, and drivers. So, Sebastian, let's talk about, what are the key metrics to measure when considering digital transformation?
Thanks for handing over. I think great, Katrina. And then first of all, what I would like to do is welcome those who have worked with before. Daniel, René, Ville, awesome. Welcome again. Great. Those who have followed the DASA DevOps Leader Program, and some of them just need a small nudge to finalize their assessment and make sure that they are ready to receive their, that's called credentials for being the DASA DevOps Leader. Really welcome. First of all, before we kick off, I want to share a personal story about myself running a large organization. I was running a large organization and we were being addressed on running big mergers and acquisitions. My team at that time consisted of roughly 1,200 individuals located across the world, and we were targeting by just running our operations. Busy enough, running all kinds of services towards the business, our end customers, and making sure that we deliver the right value. However, we were targeted to acquire a new company. The company its size was roughly 25,000 employees at that moment in time, and we were growing with 2 times the same amount of employees, 25,000 additional ones. To get authorized by the authorities to merge, we needed to divest a company with 8 factories of 11,000 individuals in parallel. And the thing what happened is that we didn't know what to do first anymore. What is important? What is criticality? How do we get authorized for specific elements? How do we get the right budget? It was so overwhelming, not only for the leadership who were uncertainty, where there was fear if my job would still exist, but it was for sure clear things needed to change. And at that moment in time, we realized that we need to organize ourselves for constant change. It was inevitable that we need to set up things clearly on how to deal with that massive amount of change. We have seen that we were having technology available that could allow us to free up human capital to repurpose this in higher value activities. So we embarked on the journey of implementing Agile. We started our first teams, we scaled up, and in 4 years' time, we really went full Agile implementation. And very successful. But I was trying to sell this story. This was a success already from day number one. We had better lead times, better cycle times, better quality, first time right, it all sounded fantastic. But the only thing what I get to hear is, Sebastian, you are on some kind of strange train, you're going too fast, it's a rocket ship, you're on the moon itself, it's great to hear, why would I change? All my KPIs are green. And then I came to the conclusion, we always will be perceived as being high performance because 80% of the big mergers and acquisitions or the 80% of the big digital transformations fail. And the company that I was working for were succeeding time by time, every time again. So what is the real reason to change? Other than we saw that the people were being overstressed, overreached, overburned, and that they were unable to continue this way. That's where DevOps came to play, where we brought a great marriage between technology, culture, the people itself, the amount of processes and changes that needs to be done. And I think it brought a lot of value towards the company. We really went from, let's call it the worst submarine in the group towards the best submarine. And those who know the book, it's David Marquette, Intent-Based Leadership, that I'm referring to. And I really am in favor about empowering the people, but it's quite a change because the leaders of the organizations were known to give me one neck to choke, give me one neck to chop, to make sure that if things go wrong, I know a person I can call. Also known in our vocabulary as the Hero Boys Network and hero culture. So we needed to invest. We need to change our language to talk to the board and say, this is something we need to embark on together. This only will be successful if all the parts of the organizations are organizing themselves around the same structure, around the same heartbeat, and start driving the same priorities across the organization. And there is where the difficulty comes. And today I want to talk about with you all, but especially also with Alexander, with Arvind, Arno, on how they have been successful in their digital transformation or in adopting DevOps across the enterprise. So to start off, maybe a little bit, Alexander, if I can start with you, if you're okay with that. Sure. Can you tell your story about the trenches, your biggest learnings and biggest mistakes that you have been seen in your journey of adopting DevOps and going digital?
Well, I'm going to try to keep it as succinct as possible because it has been quite a journey, at least within Elsevier. Maybe to give a little bit of context to the question that you've asked, Elsevier is well, traditionally a publishing company, right? It's well established, it's well known, it's recognized, and we've literally been around for more than 200-300 years. Right? So this is an older company that also has a set ways of working and a lot of knowledge about the customers. Right? So we have the traditional business and the digital business. So I'm more on the digital side, where we build digital products based on published information. So if you go into the topic like the war stories, I think Elsevier is still on that journey and still in the earlier stages of making that pivot from a more traditional waterfall type publishing business towards more of a digital business where the units come together to adopt the DevOps way of working and to get end-to-end ownership in place. So we're still on the earlier stages of doing that. Though there are already a couple of success stories that I could share. Maybe one of the items that we put in place from a technology excellence perspective, and it's maybe a little bit off topic, but is that we collaborated across the group. So we have about 2,000 technologists within Elsevier, and they're highly matrixed, spread across the globe. What we've managed to do within basically 1 year time is implement an onboarding program for all technologists that go through the new ways of working, right? Where actually the DevOps piece is central. So pivoting away from the silos, pivoting away from you only do your certain job, you don't have an overlap. But we're basically pivoting the perception of the roles that are part of the squads and the operating model, and give everybody basically the same knowledge when they enter the business. And I think one of the key points we have achieved already is that you get a significant mass, a critical mass of change by doing the talent acquisition and onboarding piece. By getting basically every month, we get a wave of about 30, 40 people that enter the company, that hit the business with a different mindset of what was there before. Right? So that's how we are actively accelerating the change within, well, primarily within our group with this product and technology. Not even speaking about product, marketing, and business development, because those again are other subsets of the business, but in the end, that needs to start to combine to be basically one delivery cycle where everybody is part of the customer-facing product deliveries. We're not there yet, but we're on the journey to implement certain core ceremonies to accelerate the business to actually get there. And onboarding is just one of them, next to changing, well, basically the tech tracks as we call them, and doing the T-shaping within the engineers to take broader responsibility and accountability of customer-facing deliveries that actually drive an outcome instead of only producing an output. Right? So we're pivoting from outputs to outcomes. Hope that gave a good starter for further discussion.
Sure, I really appreciate your extensive answer. The thing that pops up in my mind is like, okay, yeah, you're onboarding 30, 40 individuals, so that's roughly 1% of your existing technologist month, right? So yes. What about the existing order? What about the existing mass on how do you feel they are being supported in their chains?
So we've actively also been spreading the onboarding information to the existing group. Right? So we've made all the material available. It's freely available, by the way, within the company, so that everybody's able to take that into account. Next to that, we've gotten massive amounts of requests to do the onboarding for the existing org, but we currently can't manage that, right? Because we don't really have the capacity to run that in the current shape and form. So the material is there. We actively get the request, and sometimes what we also do is get people from other sides of the business to put them on the onboarding piece, so that the information also spreads into the other parts of the business that we have. For example, scientific and medical journals, which is a totally different side from technology and product. And so we spread that also out into other parts of the organization. I think one of the successes and war stories is having this program of onboarding with driving the acceleration of DevOps also now being adopted by LexisNexis, which is another company under the RELX umbrella. So right, Elsevier is one of the companies that's in the RELX portfolio. We see that spread actually into other companies. So they're starting to adopt these best practices to also accelerate their rate of change. It's one of the key ceremonies.
Great, thank you. And I'm very curious about the potential barriers that you have been seen. But before we continue with understanding the barriers and how you got the board to buy into that, I would like to ask Arnaud to share his view on his story of the trenches, the context he operates in, and how he convinced, let's call it, his stakeholders to embark on the journey of adopting DevOps, that's called ceremonies, frameworks, processes, tools, and the culture itself.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I think probably most relevant is to share with you my Emirates experience in Dubai. Dubai, of course, is a very interesting area because it's a very hierarchical oriented society. There's already a sheikh at the top, and and that is trickled down in a lot of organizations, still very traditionally organized. So trying to start a DevOps journey there was a scary exercise, but also at the same time lots of fun. I joined them at a certain moment, and DevOps at that moment in Dubai was not very present. So it was not a topic that was very prominent into IT organizations, neither in boardrooms. So, but I basically went to my peers and say, guys, there is a party going on in IT, and we're missing out on this. So we need to join the party, and so how can we do that? And of course, the beauty of working for an airline is that travel is not always the biggest challenge. So they said, well, if you think it's that much fun, why don't you go and talk to a number of people? So. And of course, being with Emirates gave you a lot of, I must say, doors opened up the moment you knocked on them. So I went to talk to a lot of people. I got a lot of inspiration from ING, spoke to a lot of the stakeholders over there. And basically, I then, adopted an approach of storytelling. because there was a lot of things that had to be clarified and describing what it is to be in a DevOps oriented organization. So I got a lot of people over. I got, Amir Aruni at that moment, who's now with Discover in the US, over to tell his story. And he's a great storyteller. So that came over very good. I took the management team over to see a lot of people in the Netherlands at the moment with ASR. We went to ING. We went to PostNL. No, we didn't go to PostNL. So we went to a number of people to see it in action. And then at a certain moment, I organized an IT summit where I got speakers from Werner Vogels, from Amazon coming over, some Arie van Bennekom, one of the authors of the manifesto. So I brought it alive. I think that was my main approach. I want to make sure that people understood what it was to be in a DevOps and agile type of organization. And as long as you keep on repeating the story, and then you start, you automatically see, because IT was 2,500 people. There are people that pick it up. Yeah, and so we started to see some teams picking it up themselves, and by no means it was a topic for discussion at board level at that moment. So, but it started to gain some momentum at that level. So we had some teams that set up their own CI/CD pipeline, that organized themselves, that started to do automated testing, embedded security testing, and I think you want to, I think that for a Middle Eastern organization, I think was the right approach, because if I would have put all my energy into trying to convince the board, I think I probably would have been worn out very much, pretty soon. But the idea of storytelling, bringing it alive, and that's probably still something you can do in any organization. Certainly, if you find, it depends a little bit in what kind of climate you are, but if you find yourself a board that's maybe not the right context or is curious, go and throw it in their face, and let them invite people to talk to them on what it is like to be in that type of organization. And yeah, I think that to me is the biggest lesson, is and then try to focus on those that get it. Yeah, try to focus and try to increase that group. So at a certain moment, there is 1/3 of the organization that get it, 1/3 that's on the fence, and then there is 1/3 that says, "It's not for us." So you focus on the ones that get it, and then you focus on the ones that reject, because that on the fence will ultimately jump over. So that's going to be your that should be your tactic in trying to to create a root grass movement. Yeah, if you don't find you have the right support at board level. That's maybe for the moment. I'm happy to elaborate where needed.
Yeah, one question that when the rest is on the fence. So how did you make those, let's call it, successes known? So how did you celebrate those successes that you achieved with this, let's call it, transformation?
Well, we had the business stakeholders at that moment. Really, it's not about blowing your own horn. Yeah, so successes always get most known if others tell about good things that are being done. Yeah, so we had the business stakeholders to share it to others in IT. Yeah, so I used the IT summit also to have some of the business stakeholders share some of these things, their experience of what things is going right. We had IT town halls where they spoke up, and I think that work was very powerful. If you have the successes being told from the other side of of the organization, because we still had a strong separation between IT and business, and having them echo it, I think was the best message we could get.
Thanks, Arno. Really appreciate your. Oh, go ahead, Alexander.
No, I agree with Arno. I think also what within my experience, what we've done is somewhere more financially driven and given them examples of what this actually did financially. So there was a benefit of actually adopting the DevOps way of working, because you got more output from the people and your operating cost was actually going to go down. So the people that were on the fence, actually, to Arno's example, jumped over because it also made sense for them, if you know what I mean. So you tend to approach everybody in a different way, and what motivates and drive them, to give them examples of what it will bring them, to get them to jump over that fence. I think it targets everybody differently within a group. Their drivers are important.
Thanks, Alex.
Did you also use, let's say, the trend analysis in Net Promoter Score and employee engagement, things like that?
We did not. I think we didn't have to write. So NPS is yeah, in an airline, NPS is very detached from IT, for instance. So your choice whether you fly Emirates first class is probably not given in by the fact whether you have a CI/CD pipeline running in IT. So employee satisfaction and engagement was not something that I was working on. That getting it to measure. I started up an IT academy. So make sure that IT and training became widely available for everyone. But I do think, yeah, it's a very good measure if you have a strong, because the trick with these things is always make sure you have a baseline. So don't start to measure it when things go right, but make sure you measure it when it is wrong. Because otherwise you're gonna, you're gonna miss the curve upwards. But yeah, no, I would love to have measured employee engagement, because I think it should have gone a good trend.
Thanks, René. Thanks for your question. I see a raised hand from Jan van den Brink.
Yes, thank you. I had a question for Arnold as well. As a matter of fact, I'm working in an aviation, or let's say, an aviation-related business as well. And one of the things which I struggle with is that even the teams, so even at the bottom level, or maybe the top level, but the ones who deliver value, even they are restricted by the heavily compliance-related restrictions they have. So my question is, how do you deal with that to get them working, let's say, with the Agile and DevOps values in mind and the way of working, when they at the same time are governed by those restrictions and highly compliant way of working?
Personally, I don't think one bites the other. I think ultimately you start a DevOps journey because you would expect your quality goes up, your throughput and your velocity goes up. So of course there is always a bit of a risk if you go into a change program that things slip. And then especially if you're in a highly regulated environment, last thing you would like to slip is your regulatory requirement. And certainly if your transformation is maybe causing a lot of unrest and unhappiness, etc. I can fully sympathize with your challenges. So also there, maybe try to focus in the teams where you think there is a stickiness with the change. Making sure, and maybe you can also, there are always also in an airline probably, there are areas that are probably, group services like HR support, like, there are finance. There are teams probably that are less exposed when it comes to the regulatory requirements. So there are probably, I don't want to downplay working in HR or finance, but you can afford a bit of a slip in your deliverables in HR or finance versus maybe those into airport operations, flight operations, where indeed, there are strong requirements that you don't want to mess around with. So yeah, try to choose your path of when to do what, because I wouldn't put them into a pilot phase.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Arnold.
To build upon that, my experience there is as soon as you make it crystal clear, also in the company handbook or something like that, what roles and responsibilities are with which person, that usually, let's say, is convincing enough. And most of the times, let's say, you get a challenge out of, let's say, people working in compliance or other oversight functions, and they try to convince you from their reality. And if you start to implement a change and transformation, let's say their reality is not the reality anymore. But let's say what they are looking for is clarity. And that is where you usually can find the consensus that crystal clear communication of roles and responsibility in, let's say, the new way of working. That is the conversation you need to have with functions like compliance and other oversight or audit functions. At least that is my experience.
Yeah, one angle that I would like to add, René. So now when we talk about convincing others, it's if you just look at it from the perspective, what are you trying to convince? And if I look at it from my experience, it's taking away the fear. Because honestly, if you are working in a heavy regulated or you have a governing body which you need to comply to, you need to bring in your evidence and your controls. It's often managed by a specific amount of, let's call it, fear or unclarity of what the impact would be. While we all know that the DevOps, the automation, the CI/CD pipeline brings in more predictability, better quality, shorter lead time, etc. While the reason of not changing it is because it's the fear of the unknown. So what would change? What would be the benefit? And then I'm not even talking about potential job security or job risk that you would see, that they would envision. But for sure, my experience is by convincing people is that I need to focus on the true fears. What is making them insecure about this, let's call it, movement around the digital change or DevOps itself?
And you can ask this question at several levels, of course,
yeah,
at the team level, but also at the board level. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for this question. I would like to move on to Arvind. What I would like to give, if you have time, tell a little bit about yourself, your context, and how you were successful or potentially your failures into, let's call this movement around DevOps.
Sure, Sebastian. So I've been part of quite a few DevOps and agile transformation journeys, right? The most special one for me, if I was to talk about, was obviously the first one that I did probably 8 or 9 years back, simply because I had the most amount of learnings from that one, right? So I was working for a large European bank, and the first thing that we established there and that we were fortunate to do was that the whole transformation there started top down, right? Rather than, many places where we've seen a group of, technologists starting the whole movement. This was more, a top down movement from the leadership, if not the board. And there, I think our why was very clear. Being a bank, we thought, our competition is not the bank next door, but really the internet giants, right, who can really take our market share at some point of time, right? So we need to match them, in terms of our technology prowess and the practices that we follow, right? So that's the thing that sort of initiated the whole agile and DevOps movement for us. And then we learned, as we went along, the first thing that we fixed was really the flow of work, right? That how do we get from idea to cash, right? How do we get from idea to production? And what are our challenges with respect to that flow of work? So that meant that we really changed the structure of the organization and focused more on creating more value streams and redesigned the whole organization to let the flow of work be better, right? Once that was secure, and we felt that we need to really parallelly work with equipping our engineers and everybody who's working in our software development lifecycle to equip them on what we call as software craftsmanship practices, right? So you'll find this term, an equivalent of that is extreme programming, and so basically practices around CI/CD, in a nutshell, right? So how do we equip them with these learnings and have extensive programs support that across the organization to have people learn more and more around on DevOps. And then, of course, the culture, right? We being an old traditional company, not being born and brought up, so to speak, in the internet era, we had a lot of things to fix as far as our culture was concerned. And we ran a lot of change management programs around how do we really change the culture of the organization, the mindset. And that meant, changing of policies, changing of, the day-to-day, movements, as we call them. And movements of truth, as we call them, and then moving to a more collaborative, work culture. So that's how we progressed, and it was a pretty long journey, for that matter. 3-4 years is what it took to a point that it started giving us the required benefits and started measuring the end outcomes.
Thanks, Arvind. I really like it. So what I would like to add, because I think on the chat that some elements that I'm really in favor of are being shared. So I think Alexander shared objectives and key results. or potentially ODSMs, objective goals and measures, strategy and measures. I think what really is a common goal and common enemy is often being mentioned as one of the drivers behind, let's call it unity and joint collaboration. However, writing down those shared objective and key results, bring it into your cadence and your structure, your rhythm in the heartbeat of your organization. And the thing that I'm always trying to explain, if you have driving on the highway here in the Netherlands, there are always those signs about the speed itself. No one keeps track of it until we have a police agent with a radar or something else, and then suddenly things are being followed up. What did you do in your organization, Arvind, to make sure that those common goals, those common objectives were being known, measured, and followed upon throughout everything they did?
Right. So the KPIs that we measured and OGSMs, like you mentioned, whether it's so to start with, we also had the whole organization divided into the dev part and the ops part, which were functioning differently. Dev obviously focusing on the how do we get things in production at a quicker pace, whereas obviously the ops talking about the stability and the availability of the systems, right? So inherently the objectives were different, but like you said, it's important to have shared objectives. And what I've seen work successfully is these visual radiators, as you call it, as you might call it, which could be large TV screens across your across different locations. You're working in Netherlands, I'm working in India, we have another team in the US, in a distributed fashion, but all of them having the same radiators, if you will, in front of them. If the production site is down, then everybody knows across the location that something is wrong, and then they collectively work on fixing it, right? So the role of the visual radiators, I found it very useful, which was really something which pops up across these teams and gives you a health of your pipeline on how things are as far as your pipeline is concerned. And these are really shared in terms of how many fixes are going, who's responsible for putting the code in the production, who's broken the pipeline, and so on and so forth, right? So the entire thing around monitoring and having visual radiators across the board, across the team, is essential. And then you take it up to the next level on how it's governed across the organization at a leadership level, at a board level. And then while the KPIs that you measure there would be something different, but it's an outcome of really the speed and stability part that you measure at the team level.
Yeah, the cascading, I think that's what you're referring to. The goal cascade, top down, bottom up, as
yes.
well, between, let's call it, the wall of confusion, I think is critical. What I do like is something that also Alexander shared on and René on the chat itself. So if everyone is on the chat, please feel free to respond, and we can have even multiple conversations running in parallel. One is on screen, the other one is going on into the chat. What I'm curious about is how did you took away the wall of confusion? How did you took away, maybe Alexander, the wall between your business, your development, your operations, and we all know it's called BizDevSecOps or BizDevSec Compliance Risk Ops. So it's becoming more and more teams together. It's not putting them in a single room, I assume.
Well, if I would say that we've taken the wall of confusion away, I would be lying, right? So that's not where we are currently.
Brutally honest.
I can't make that statement, but there are many walls, as Arvind already described, right? So you got your vertical walls and you got your horizontal. Sorry, the horizontal walls and the vertical walls. It depends on which one you want to solve for first. I tend to go with Arvind's approach, right? So this is more of a bottom-up exercise to at least make sure that the groups that are formed that deliver the product are actually organized in the right way, and that the RACI in that group is also quite clear, and also the objective that they're trying to hit. At least that's what we're doing with TechX. Like, you got this goal that you're targeting, and it doesn't really matter if you're in dev, quality, TI, infrastructure, security, as long as you make sure that you align your activities towards those objectives that you're trying to hit. At least, like, let's take that debate out of the table. Then we can have the horizontal debate if it lines up with the company mission and the vision and the values, all that stuff. You can have that debate, but getting that group to be aligned in a corporate that is highly matrix is already quite a thing to do. What we've done is we started working on our own SDLC, or software delivery lifecycle reference model, to ensure that we get a general way of working to actually get that done and implement it within Elsevier. I think one of the pitfalls, or maybe a tip for the room, is usually what you see is blueprinting, right? So they come up with a certain way of organizing. Spotify is one of them. Certain way of organizing, and then basically blueprint that on the business and making sure that that is implemented to solve the problems. That doesn't really work well in a well-established business. It might work in a greenfield, but in an established business, we're coming up with a reference model to tackle that structurally within the company, right? To get the OKRs in there, the objectives, the key results well aligned, and to avoid the cascading, right? I think if you start cascading OKRs, you can then better go back to KPOs, right? Because that's then basically what you're doing. The trick is getting the teams engaged close to the customer, solving problems instead of building features or solutions towards output. I think that's the key difference, what at least for me, the OKR approach gives us or enables us to do if executed well. Right? I think that's the first thing that we need to nail. And if you got the squads and the groups aligned, you can work your way up. That's, I think, an easier way than to do it top down, because then you're going to get the feature push or the KPO push that you're trying to avoid, because you're not enabling your team to be autonomous and responsible in delivering value for the customer. I think that's where I'll pause.
The thing what pops up in my mind, I think, is that, so what I always find very relevant is to get the business context, where the company is operating in, extremely clear.
Exactly.
And then you're saying is, what we gonna do as team, squad, group, solution, train, define a group of individuals that can contribute on solving the problem or delivering that new solution into the market. Do you have any great examples on how to bring the business context, or any of us of this group of individuals in this call, on how to bring that clarity on the business context into a language understood by each part of the organization?
I think Amazon does that in a really great way by working backwards, right? With getting a release statement out there of what you're actually trying to solve for. Yeah. I think that's one of the approaches that tends to work really well if applied well through qualified people, I'd say. That's a way to actually get that done.
We're not pushing any book here, but indeed, Working Backwards is a book where inside stories and secrets from inside of Amazon is being shared. I think they have a lot of great practices, bringing that memo, setting the context in every meeting. I think that's great. Any other example that people see, or ceremonies they have implemented to get that context known?
Maybe I can maybe share one. One of the first teams that I got to work in a DevOps way of working was a check-in team at Emirates. Check-in indeed was a traditional way of working. There was at a certain moment a need to move to a new check-in system. And one of the key business drivers was the average handling time. So from the moment someone appears at your counter until they leave, without, of course, reducing your customer service, because at Emirates that's a key area. And by that team to focus on the handling time, and monitoring the handling time, with the system, make sure that the system itself was able to measure it, and then continuously fine-tuning the handling time. That was a very good success, because they were working together. We even moved that team to sit together with the business. They were sitting in the airport, albeit somewhere in a cellar and in the most terrible place you could even house your people. But the fact that they were sitting together with the business, they were immediately exposed, and they could even walk upstairs to the check-in desk to see how things were going. I think that was a very good example to see how the DevOps, the model of working together, sitting by the business, having a clear KPI of what they were expecting, was really working very well and got a lot of praise by the team. So I love that when we saw that happening.
Yeah, I think while listening to this story, and coming back on the topic of today, interesting is that what I feel here is like, okay, bring the team as close to the customer. Would it then be a board topic? Would it be a board topic if you are able to optimize your processes, bring in technology, you are able to get as close to the customer, listening into it? pivoting your teams into a structure that fits the need, feature, product team, project team, in any shape that enables you to be more effective. Why should it then be a board topic?
Sometimes it requires an organization to change its org structure and ways of working.
And that requires some kind of buy-in from the board.
Buy-in from the board, changing certain incentive structures, stuff like that. Right? It requires certain changes to get larger groups to be motivated to drive this change.
Yeah, to add on that, Alexander, and Marian Draganov is also in this round, and we worked together a couple of years. And back in 2019, we started a small transformation towards an agile way of working. And we started to organize our teams around our workplace services products. And then we organized, let's say, squads and multidisciplinary. But don't need to explain that how that works. But we kept our hierarchical structure, let's say, the same, because we felt that we should first focus on how we work, and to make a statement that that is also important, equally important next to what you deliver. And let's say 3/4 of a year later, there was a good momentum to start to discuss also with Works Council the changes in the hierarchy. And then we also got Corona and things became really complicated, but not for us, because our squads worked already quite autonomous, focused on their products. And the logical next step was that we should also make the changes in our hierarchical structure with chapters, etc. And for the outer world, it was 1 year later, there was suddenly, wow, you did a big change. And let's say that change, what we did was not that big at all, because we were already more than a year on our way, improving our delivery. But as soon as we changed the hierarchical structure, we had all the intention from the world around us. They were in another way aware that we were doing things differently, but the eye catcher was, oh, René and his team changed the org structure, and now they are working agile. And that was that's really strange, how the outer world reacted to that. And yeah, you gain a lot of, let's say, attention if you need to present in Works Council and these kinds of things. But yeah, let's say sometimes you need these kind of changes to really get the eye catcher for other people as well. But I would anyhow recommend to start with the way of work and never start with changes in the hierarchy. Because if you start with that, then people think, hierarchy is changed, the change is done. And then you have to, let's say, to take the other steps as well. And that is the real hard work.
Yeah, at the same time, René, if you don't change the seat around the table, everyone is going to sit at the same place where they were sitting. Yeah. So if you do what you always did, you get what you always got. Yeah. So it depends a little bit maybe on the nature of the organization. I like the idea of moving the seats around the table and create a bit of confusion and making sure that there is the awareness of change. Yeah, because if the change is happening in a common context, same work environment, you still report to the same boss, you were still at the same location, you work together with 3 guys who's sitting on 2 other floors. It's not so. There needs to be change, because so I learned from Ron van Kemenade, I use that expression a lot, no revolution without casualties. And, so if you really want to move things, there will be a few people that will ultimately, and the casualties may be a hard word, but it could be a change of role. Doesn't mean that everyone has to leave the organization. But I think it is important that your transformation goes together with the sense of change, because if it's done disconnected in time, I think maybe it fits in some organizations, it does, and maybe also in the current time with working from home, these changes can be done without being visible. Yeah, I'm just trying to think out loud here, but maybe just.
You're absolutely right. Let's say in our case, what I just explained, let's say in the hierarchical change, we said also goodbye to 3 managers out of the management team. We had them in a change management role, but they were not so successful, and that was also kind of a test. So I did not select them for, let's say, the next phases of the organization, and we assigned them to other roles in other parts of the organization. And that was, well, to be honest, that was kind of an accelerator for the change itself as well.
Yeah, one story to share, I think. I visited an aircraft manufacturer somewhere in the southern of France. They were building the biggest aircraft at that time. And they had 4 designed product data management systems. They had at 4 locations that they were building all kinds of separate components. And to make an aircraft fly, I think the architecture and the design and the collaboration between the parts needs to be, let's call it, at the quality level you can assume.
That's
However, the organization were not unable to bring the parts together. And we all know the story of that awesome channel that says they had wrong connectors, it didn't fit, it didn't work. Awesome. The VP of HR who I met, who was going to retire that week, told me the awesome stories. And he said, we needed to replace 60% of the management to build a better aircraft against lower cost without any technology change. And that concluded that leadership makes a difference. So I need to conclude with René that sometimes, yes, or with Arno, that it has some casualties. I think, yes, it will have. And I don't know if it's the right name for it, but I think you lose, you gain some, you lose some. I think that happens in any transformation. But that comes to the conclusion that, when you need to restructure, you need to have support from the top, right? You need to have the hands on each other for the Workers' Council. It needs to be very clear. So my question is, how did you get that buy-in? How did you get the buy-in for the approval of the Workers' Council or that's, let's call it, restructuring elements?
Well, life in Dubai was easy. There was no Workers' Council. So that was very easy. But yeah.
I think I can comment to that.
Still, you need buy-in from, let's say, other important stakeholders.
Alexander, you raise your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I do want to flag one item. What at least in my experience, I often get this question. So how did you actually manage to get critical change going in a company that's well established with having a large pool of, they call it legacy mindsets? Well, okay, in certain cases it is, but I think what you should never forget is that the legacy mindsets or the legacy people in a company have a tremendous amount of knowledge about the customer base. Yeah. Right, so sometimes you see, and especially with consultancy, they come in, you need to pivot that group of people, you need to get rid of them because they can't cope with the change. That is a tricky thing because they actually have the knowledge that the new group or the new people that have the mindset don't have. Yeah. And so I think it's a well-balanced approach to do the pivot from a DevOps perspective, but try to get the people, on the early example, that are on the fence, try to get them on board with the transformation because they've got a ton of information about the customer that can accelerate your product delivery going forward. If you just say, well, those are off the shelf, we need those anymore, you are going to hurt your delivery going forward. It's an incredibly valuable group. And if you can get them motivated and on board, some of them will actually be your champions and your brand advocates because some of them were waiting for change to happen, right? So that's a big thing, at least within a well-established company that you shouldn't overlook. It's an important group.
Yeah, you mentioned also the key incentives. So it seems that the incentives changed during your transformation, or so how did you incentivize, let's call it, that established order to make that change?
Working with metrics, collaboration metrics, trying to get the incentives to change. Velocities, predictabilities, deployments, like the metrics that basically affect the broader group. And again, right to the earlier example with the horizontals and the verticals, the horizontals are more tricky, but you can do it within a group if you have authority is the wrong word, but if you actually manage that group or lead that group, you can actually get that changed in that space.
Yep.
To change the incentive structure. For example, if you have product or tech, which we currently have within Elsevier, you run into like certain people have like a 1-year field of view, like they're only targeting features for a certain customer, they're targeting short-term deliveries. From a tech perspective, it's quite tricky because some stuff is like a 3-year plan, you need to build your CI pipeline, you can't really do that in a year. So if you get the incentives right for that group to focus also on the longer-term initiatives that maybe they're already in the next role, you're going to get a way better balance in that group. And collaboration metrics are actually one of them, and getting them into their personal development plans is a way to actually get people to fall in line, or at least to work with the transformation instead of having the old patterns within that group to just continuously perpetuate. That's one way to break it, at least within smaller clusters, to get that change going.
I think maybe to add that, at board level, what is important is that you don't bring the transformation down to just a set of KPIs. Yeah, there is a role for you to make sure that they understand there is a whole range of activities happening up to, so there is a bit of storytelling to be done at the board level. Funny enough, here at the bank, they thought that in starting, using OKRs resulted in a digital transformation. So that is
that's a disappointment.
Someone read the book, measure what matters, and they said, okay, yeah, we need to get OKRs and we change. So I told them, well, it's about like buying a new weight scale, and then think you're going to lose weight. So there is definitely some work to be done. So yeah, there is the risk at the board level, the whole transformation is just a set of numbers. So I think there is a role for us to make sure that they understand what is really happening behind the scene. And this is not simple. This is hard stuff. And you need their support to make it happen. And yes, it is easy if you can bring it down to 5 or 10 KPIs or OKRs, but there is a shitload of work happening behind the scene, and they need to understand that.
Yeah, amen. It requires hard work and perseverance to get things done and moving.
Yeah.
Before we are hitting 7:15. That means that we normally by the agenda, I'm looking to Katrina, is that we should go over into the wrap up and closing message. So how do you want us to continue? Because the current energy and momentum allows us to continue for another 2 hours, I think. But
well, I think, let's just, sort of close off the conversation for the next 10 minutes and then just wrap it up for 5, and then
I need to disappear at 7:30, guys. So
okay,
you can continue the whole night, but not with me.
No. I mean, 10 more minutes of closing the conversation, and then we'll wrap it up. Sebastian.
Good. Yeah, I was looking into because I think sorry for the pronunciation. Nabila. Managed buy-in is very important when we started our DevOps movement. We did this by creating awareness sessions for our leaders and started the conversation going at the working level. As everyone had a different idea about DevOps, we are still at the baby steps, but we are at the stage where staff are asking to be enrolled awareness program. Thanks. I just would like to say thank you for sharing. So I go with Katrina, so keep the conversation going. But what I do want to do is make an invite for those who are present into the call. Of course, you have seen that we have seasoned experts who have managed or lead the biggest transformation in industry around Agile and DevOps. Are there any questions? Feel free to open up your mic. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, feel free to type it into the chat, and we try to moderate it as much as possible. And first of all, I would like to contribute to, I say already, thank you for those who have contributed a lot already. Good. So Arvind, looking into your experience as leader,
there was one question, I think. Sorry, Sebastian.
Sorry, I didn't see it.
Jon and Marion. Apologies.
There they are. There they pop up. It's somehow delayed with me.
Thank you. May I?
Yeah.
Is it my turn? Great. Cool. So thinking about the different dimensions we've mentioned, There was one dimension that was I wanted to reinforce in our approach, René. So what René shared, we looked at the people, processes before going to the structure. But then for the reasons how we organized, the technology was not with me, and this is where I'm now. I am working on DevOps technology, so all the integrations, CI/CD pipeline, and all this, you know it probably better than me. And every time I want to go to the next level. So the customer is wanting some level of DevOps pipeline, either more simple or more complex. As long as I open the talk of, look, it's not just technology, it's not just the pipeline. You need to have the think about the people, processes, and eventually maybe a structure of all that. The customer is like, oh wait, that's too big, that's too complicated. I just want a few integrations to have my continuous integration, and fingers crossed that's going to work. Well, guess what? It didn't work in most customers. So coming to the question, any advice on that? Do you think, or how do you think DevOps transformation can be approached coming from the technology perspective, and then opening up?
What problem are you trying to solve? Sorry, Irvin.
No, go ahead, please. Send it.
What problem are you trying to solve by using a DevOps way of working?
Typically, it's about their time to market and expected efficiency in automation.
Is it currently not good enough?
Yeah.
And then if so, like, what's the problem? And does the business share that view of the problem?
That's a good question. So I think the problem here is that they think that my customers, the business, thinks that just with technology, just with implementing the technology, automation will automatically happen. So automation is just technology.
Yeah, and one angle to add, maybe I've understood your question wrong. So in my story when I kicked off was like potential and performance, and there is a quite big difference into it. Sometimes is the current level of performance is the level of acceptance of the business. While our technology heart shows, okay, we can go as light speed. We are light speed engineers. We can speed it up if we just got this new piece of technology, or if we get that data source in, we could automate even more. But it doesn't drive the, let's call it the numbers or the costs or the metrics that business are being measured upon. And that's what I often feel a lot of friction in the organization. But we can do awesome stuff if we could somehow have this part of technology. We could go for 100% KPIs and metrics that are all green, but the business doesn't need that. And is it good enough versus what's the potential that's available? And that, I think, is an interesting topic to really dive into, versus potential versus performance and business need. And I think sometimes there is quite a big difference between the potential available, the performance needed by the business, and the actual performance that is required. Well, technology offers it all.
I think what is important.
You also need a little bit of technology to speed up the delivery process, but it should start with, let's say, what is it what you need to deliver, and better is what is it what you need to, what is your purpose in life? What is the ultimate goal for a team? And yeah, I wrote it also in the chat, what Alexander says, bring your team close to your customers, solve their problems, instead of building your own idea of your own features. And let's say, if you make that small steps, you have to do a lot of recurring things. And that is where it is paying off to automate these things and to keep the flow. So the technology is helping you to accelerate and to get flow in your delivery. But the key is bring your team close to your customer and ensure that they have meaningful conversations with the right input on the right topics.
what I just wanted to maybe to highlight is that if you have a successful transformation, there is a role for the business as well. I don't know where your product manager is, but if there's a product manager on the business side, you know, he needs to be able to articulate the capabilities of the IT team. You have a certain WIP limit. You cannot, you don't have infinite capabilities. Yeah. So the success of a transformation is the ability to say no to the right things. Yeah, you know, so if the business keeps on asking everything, you know, you can put Max Verstappen in a Formula One car that goes 300 kilometers an hour, but if they want to go 500, they probably see the whole thing as a failure. So unless you have explained them that your capacity is only 300 kilometers an hour, you know, so there is a dialogue, and there is then someone who in the business who should be able to articulate the capabilities of IT in business lingo. Because otherwise, you will always see that technology will disappoint. The technology, by nature of its being, has its limits, and so trying to find these limits and articulate that in the right business language, I think, is an important role for a product manager.
I think the DevOps, the whole movement really goes beyond technology. I think it's a sort of an established fact now, right? So dare I say, technology in this case is in a DevOps transformation is more of a commodity, right? So I think every bank, every company, every enterprise can get access to the similar or same technology, right? So that's hardly a differentiator anymore. So when you're talking about DevOps transformation, it's essentially, you know, like people talked about, how does this business get involved? What is the leadership involvement? What's the culture of the organization? How your teams are organized? So it really takes the village to do a DevOps transformation, just not the technology. And that's where I think the question by Nabila in the chat is very relevant. That how do we get the leadership buy-in? And you know, there is a lot of times a need for an education, quote unquote, to the leadership around what's the DevOps journey all about, and how does that tie up to the overall strategy of the organization, and how does that help in the outcome that the organization is seeking.
Thanks, Arvind. Checking with Marjan, was this answering the question to your need?
Oh, definitely a lot of valuable ideas and a few very good, let's call them discovery questions, Alexander. So yeah, that's a very good start, I think.
Thanks. One other point to add, of course, when you are having those technologists working in your organization who are so eager to use the newest fancy tools to the maximum, you always have the risk of attrition. And then sometimes giving them an environment where they can experiment and can play around also de-risk some of that elements. There are so many things to look into it. It's not only about doing what the business wants, it's also, do you make sure that you are able to keep your, let's call it human capital into your organization, and different ways of looking into it. Looking to time, I think we have time for one additional question. I see the raised hand of Jan, and I would like to give him the final opportunity to ask his question to this audience.
Yeah, thank you, Sebastian. I think that some of the answers given to the previous question are already related a bit to what I was asking, but I was triggered by what the situation of Alexander at his organization, because I'm working in some kind of hybrid situation as well, in which the IT organization, a large part is still working in let's say the traditional IT service management process constructed organization, but another part also is working in the more agile DevOps related organizations, and I'm striving to get them aligned in terms of goals and OKRs, KPIs, and it's I can maybe think of some theoretical ways to go, but I was really thinking about some experience on how to get them aligned.
Why?
Start by I got the book from my bookshelf. I think.
Sorry, that was a really short answer. Like, why do you want to get them aligned? Like, what's the purpose of getting them aligned? What do you want to achieve?
One of the more practical reasons is that at the board level, they strive with each other on the KPIs and trying to convince the board on which way to go sometimes. So I think that's better than to have them give them a communal shared why, shared vision, and some shared KPIs. Instead of them, let's say, slaughtering each other at board level. So that's a very practical why, but let's say at a strategic level, I think they would, if they work together, they can at the end deliver together better value to the customer. So, but that's a more theoretical, of course, but in general, that's what it is.
Can you focus on the one that support the model, like more the champions that understand what you're trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
We're doing an A/B test. Like if you got two similar products in two similar domains, try to measure them both.
Okay.
See what the difference is, and then just show the results, and then let them have the debate.
But does that the issue which I raise is that what you recognize, because you're talking about, let's say, more or less a hybrid organization in which the new way of working is besides the old way of working. Do you recognize the challenge, or?
I certainly do.
Yeah.
Okay. To conclude on this topic and looking to time, I would say thank you for asking. And the answer I give to many of those who ask me the question, if they are questioning what is right, then I said, do you rather keep talking about a new bike and still walk to the bus next year? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just need to buy a bike, test it out and see, and then potentially you will buy a faster bike, or you say, oh, maybe walking is still the best solution going forward. But that you will know the same day, rather discussing it for 3 to 6 months.
Okay, yeah, giving them the facts and let them decide. Yep. Okay, thank you, Alexander.
Thanks. Then I'm going to give it back to Katrina for her famous last words.
Yes, well, thank you very much, everybody, for talking about, the changes, the challenges, and what we need to keep in mind when it comes to convincing the board. And thank you, Sebastian, for leading the conversation, and also Arnaud and Arvind. Arnaud had to leave early, but he said, he's left his email there. So if you want to get in touch with him sort of privately, do so. And Zander also for all your comments and everybody chat, and for contributing to this great roundtable discussion for the ELF. And we will be organising more of these ELF discussions, and we hope to plan, sort of mostly every 6 weeks we'll be doing one of these ELF roundtables or discussions. So thank you everybody for contributing today and for being part of it.